I have analyzed dozens of UFC fighters, and here is how MMA changes your body. I am Simon Borec, a med student, and today I'm showing you the 5 most shocking ways MMA permanently transforms fighters. Let's start with what everyone can see. Cauliflower ear. This isn't just cosmetic, it's permanent vascular damage. In our anatomy lab last semester, we discussed a former wrestler's ear, and what I found shocked me. The cartilage was completely replaced with calcified scar tissue that had zero blood supply. When your ear gets repeatedly compressed between a head and arm during wrestling, blood vessels rupture between the cartilage and perichondrium. That blood pools, cutting off nutrition to the cartilage, which then dies and gets replaced by fibrous tissue. And once it calcifies, that's it. No plastic surgery can fully restore your ear. And here is what's even crazier. The same process happens in your brain. Next up, facial structure changes. This isn't just aging, it's permanent bone remodeling. Your facial bones adapt to repeated trauma through a process called Wolff's Law. The same way weightlifters' bones thicken under load, fighters' facial bones, particularly the orbital ridge, zygomatic arch, and mandible, literally reshape and thicken as a protective mechanism. Look at these before/after photos. Is your skeleton literally armoring up? If this is your first time here, I break down the medical side of MMA that nobody else talks about. A few months before, my breakdown of UFC brain damage went viral. Today we are going even deeper. I spent last semester in med school studying how extreme physical stress changes human anatomy. And MMA is basically the perfect laboratory for this. Screenshot the warning signs checklist I will show you at the end if you train MMA. It might literally save your brain. By the end, I will also show you the most disturbing change that happens to every single fighter, one that affects them long after retirement. The UFC doctor who shared these findings with me was removed from his position within 24 hours of our conversation. Okay, the last sentence is not true, but it sounds dramatic. However, the rest is alright. Now for what you cannot see. The internal transformations that are even more dramatic. Neurological professors show us fighter brain scans that were initially misdiagnosed as belonging to patients in their 70s. With each significant head impact, your brain experiences micro-trauma. Tiny tears in axons, the communication cables between neurons. This explains why some retired fighters show cognitive decline decades earlier than normal.
I'm only 43 years old. I'm an old mature. I matured old. Very fast, but at the same time, my body hasn't matured great, just because of my father's really old. My father's 80 years old. My grandmother's 100 years old. So my body is in great shape.
The hormonal destruction is even crazier. We just covered endocrine disruption in med school, and I was stunned when I applied those same diagnosis criteria to fighter hormone panels. Studies from the UFC Performance Institute show fighters' testosterone can significantly drop during fight camp. The UFC has this data on every fighter, but they have actively suppressed the long-term hormone studies because the results would change how we view weight cutting forever. After fights, especially losses, cortisol stays elevated for up to 2 weeks, suppressing immune function and slowing recovery. This hormonal roller coaster ages fighter prematurely. It's why many look a decade older than they actually are. Now let's talk about the permanent damage that fighters never fully recover from. The changes that follow them long after retirement. First, the skeletal system. Those knuckles don't just callus. They develop bone spurs and permanent arthritis. Almost 50% of retired MMA fighters reported chronic hand/wrist pain. Stop the video right now and look at your hands. See how easily you can spread your fingers. 40% of veteran fighters physically cannot do this simple movement. Tasks like buttoning shirts or using smartphones become increasingly difficult. And it's not just hands, their entire skeletal system ages prematurely. Spinal degeneration in fighters occurs at 3 times the normal rate. Those highlight reel slams and takedowns compress vertebral discs, leading to herniation and nerve impingement. Approximately 55% of retired MMA fighters reported chronic back pain. Fully heal. Each armbar or kimura permanently stretches the joint capsule, leading to chronic instability. By retirement, the average UFC fighter has undergone at least 2 major joint surgeries. Their bodies are literally held together by surgical screws, donated ligaments and scar tissue. Comment below which of these body changes shock you the most, because I'm tracking which ones fighters and gyms are most concerned about for my next video. However, the most disturbing changes happen where you cannot see them, inside the fighter's brain and nervous system. I wasn't going to include this next part because it's so disturbing, but many of you are passionate about this topic, so I basically have to do it. CT gets all the headlines, but the neurological damage starts much earlier. With each significant head impact, tau proteins begin accumulating in the brain. A 23 study from Boston University found that fighters show tau protein accumulation decades before symptoms typically appear. This is a ticking time bomb in their brains. Dana White publicly claimed fighter brain health is their top priority, but the reality is pretty different.
How did your career come to an end?
I ended up getting go for a physical, and they found lesions in my brain, and which led to further studies, and I found that I have dementia.
The early warning signs are subtle but devastating. Fighters experience personality changes, impulsive control problems, and memory issues years before formal diagnosis. Their loved ones often report they became a different person. Now you know why. To top it off, the blood-brain barrier, which normally protects your brain from toxins, becomes permanently compromised in fighters. This allows inflammatory molecules to constantly attack neural tissue, accelerating brain aging by 15 to 20 years. Even more disturbing, these changes appear to be irreversible. Beyond the brain and bones, MMA devastates every system in the fighter's body. The endocrine system takes a catastrophic hit. Many veteran fighters have clinically low testosterone levels regardless of steroids use. This hormonal collapse doesn't just affect performance, it causes depression, cognitive decline and metabolic disorders. Many fighters gain 50-70 pounds after retirement as their metabolic rate crashes. The cardiovascular system doesn't escape either. Those enlarged fighters' hearts, they often develop pathological remodeling. The left ventricular hypertrophy that helps during competition becomes dangerous arrhythmia risk later. Perhaps most disturbing is the immune system dysfunction. Chronic inflammation from training damage suppresses normal immune function. Fighters show accelerated immunosenescence. Their immune system ages decades faster than normal. So, what's the takeaway? Definitely, it's not to scare you. As a med student who loves these sports, I'm not sharing this to scare you, but because fighters deserve to know what's actually happening to their bodies. Screenshot this warning signs checklist now if you train or know someone who does. It might literally save a life or career. If this breakdown shocked you, hit subscribe button, because next week I'm revealing another surprising stuff. I'm Simon Borec and I will catch you in the next one.